Oh, no. Dear me. Hold on. We've got to find our sploosh. Where's our sploosh? Sploosh. Hello, good morning, and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Ann, Disembodied Hands, Quindy, Disembodied Beard, John, and an absent Karinico. That's okay, though. We've got all of you. Hi, everybody. Hello. Alrighty. I'm going to map in more sky color today. Hello, Sea Trial. How's it going? Alrighty. So yeah, I figured I've had the blues today. I've got the blues today. I want a blue. I want a blue. So I've got to look at. Yeah. Okay. The wings are going to be interesting. Maybe I'll start on the wings. So we're going to be using our Sea Dragon Blue, top secret Sea Dragon Blue, and our a very non-secret and commonly available Dragon Blue. I'm just going to mix these guys up, along with some white. And probably actually a mixture of dragon and white. Sea Dragon is fantastic. Fantastic. It's my new fave. I have a couple of new faves. Alright, then get some white. So let's get in actually palette view. She's so big. She takes up, like I have to not shove her off of the edge. How are you guys doing this morning? How's your Friday? Weekend imminent. Right? Boop. There we are. Alrighty. Starting with those. Sorry, it's another allergy day. I already have my filter going. All my things. So allergies. I'm so sick of it. This is seriously going to make me change my favorite season here. My favorite season in this, in this place, because everywhere I've lived, I've had a favorite season. My favorite season here was summer, but I don't know if it is anymore, guys, after this. Oh, yeah, work is kicking your butt. Yeah, I feel it. You need to prep for your D&D session. Yes. Yeah, I know. I was always in that boat. Because it's always like D&D, it seems like no matter how much I tried to pre-prep, I would never pre-prep enough. Or sometimes I just would not have the time to pre-prep, and I'd just have to go off the top of my head. Alright, let's mix these guys up. So I'm putting a little bit more water in the ones that have white, except for the pure white, which I want to actually be pretty strong. Yeah, you just never know. Are you using the paint full strength out of the bottle, I would say then, Val? I don't know that, the primer shouldn't have that issue. I usually put, only a thin coat of primer on. If I'm using Reaper brush on. You don't have to put it on very thick. If you put on primer very thick, it can, and it's not just Reaper primer, but if it's a very fine primer, which Reaper primer is, it can get almost a little bit fluid phobic. It can, it's almost like it gets a very shiny finish, and it can repel stuff a little bit. My question actually is, does it do it with all your paints, including ones that are high coverage? Like if you take out, say, ruddy leather and use it straight out of the bottle, or walnut and use it straight out of the bottle, does it give you that effect? Really? Interesting, Crowley. I wonder if they changed the formulation on it. I loved it for the longest time. I'd have to get a new bottle and compare to my old bottle here as far as the brush on primer. Interesting. I'd almost say get a man, but you probably have a fresh bottle. Like I'm like, huh. I really wonder at that point if we're suffering from a changed formulation. I have no way of knowing though, Val. I have no problems with it. Does it matter how much primer you use? Have you tried to thin it? I always thin it. Always. Never put it on full strength, ever. Have you tried to thin it and put it on a bit of a lighter? And also, are you putting it over resin or metal? Does it matter? Or plastic, I guess. I've never used it over plastic. But yeah, that's really weird. So it sounds like a lot of other people haven't had problems painting over it, but Crowley has. If a lot of people haven't had problems painting, I can put it on my list to buy a new bottle and test it. And maybe get an answer for you. So let me put that on my list because I was going to put a Reaper order in today. Oh, it's Vallejo brush on primer. I can't answer questions about that. Yeah, like I can answer questions about Reaper brush on, but I can't answer questions about Vallejo brush on. I've never liked it because it was always too much of a, like the base is so soft that it wasn't very durable, so I just never used it. However, just for Crowley's sake, I will put on white primer. But yeah, no. I mean, the thing about white primer is that if your paint is either too thinned or, depending on the line, too thick, you can see streakiness with it easier than you can see it with black primer. So it depends. Like with a low coverage paint, you definitely are going to see streakiness until you thin it enough that you can get self-leveling. Drop or two of gray. Weird, but it's weird that they're white. It needs to be mixed with another primer. Yeah, I haven't used Vallejo primer in, not since I started with Reaper. Like I stopped using Vallejo shortly after I started making MSP. So that's over 20 years ago. But yeah, so I would say with white primer in general, if you are not used to using white primer, be aware that it is gonna, I wonder if I can simulate this problem, since I am using white here. Let's see here. Except I expect all these paints to be pretty, maybe I can force it. Hold on, let me grab a brush. So white's going to show, like white, because you're dealing with white, if you're dealing with a paint that's at all transparent, depending on how you're applying it, so let's say we just grab this. So if I don't have the paint thinned enough, I'm going to see brush strokes. I do have my paint thin enough, sadly. But you're going to see, like if you overlap paint, or if you leave a hard edge, or if you do any of this stuff, I'm going to have to work on erasing this stuff, but you're gonna see, like I can't really show you because this paint, unfortunately I have thinned my paint to the best of my ability. Okay, so a little overlap here. You can kind of see that darker crease where I let that edge dry and then I painted over it. You're gonna see stuff like that more with white primer, in my opinion. And that's usually a result of like you've just let something dry too much, or you've got the paint at the wrong consistency where it goes streaky. Streaky paint is almost always over-thinning or under-thinning, depending on the paint and the paint viscosity. If your paint is like a tube paint where it's a very thick viscosity, under-thinning will give you streakiness. If your paint is more fluid, then it's usually over-thinning that will give you the streakiness. Right. But look at how watery my paint is. Water. That's, of course, that's a different one. The one I was just using is this, so let's look at that. Oh, Twisted Oma sub. 68 months. I see you, Twisted Oma. Thank you for the resub. So, the key here is if you're using a well, you should be able to do this experiment. If I bring a brush full out and I put it down and I smear and I press, where it's the thinnest, you can really see through it. Look at that. But where it's thickest, it looks full strength. Like, that's where I start. And when I pull a paintbrush through it, it doesn't, like, you can't even see it. It doesn't take any time to close up, right? Whereas if I'm working with a thicker paint, this one still, I've thinned it enough. If you're working with a thicker paint, if you pull your brush through it, you're going to see it take time. If your paint takes time to close back up after you pull your brush through it, then it's not self-leveling, and that's more likely to be streaky. Anyway, now I have to fix this. Fix this. But yeah, so... And it's going to depend, so I'm going to have to kind of cross-hatch some white over this to erase the erase that edge so that I can get a good blend. That's the problem with letting your edge dry when you're working like this. It means you have to do some repair work. But that's okay. I wanted to work on wings today anyway, so I will. But yeah, as far as Vallejo primer, I cannot answer your question because I have not used it in a very long time. Yeah, I'm gonna have to really hit this because blue is such a strong color. It's gonna take me a bit to like actually nail this out, get it to go away. Okay, I'm gonna do probably a little blending. Probably need to get a thicker white in order to really get this to work. There we go. Now I'm getting it. But still, you can see that shadow of that line. I'm going to have to get a thicker white in order to repair that. So this is why I work so fast and why I tend to wet blend, guys, so I don't get that hard edge. And also why I tend to base coat the entire surface. But on this, base coating the entire surface is fraught because I want to do a transition in color on each panel. So what I really should have done is put down probably a very strong coat of white first, or a pale blue or something. So I'm going to get my full strength white. And I'm going to try to do full strength white wet blend. Doing it real quick. There we go. It's a little better. So I needed to go full strength white, and even then I can still see a little line, but I can get rid of that with layering. Cool, Hyper. Yeah, I shot that thing like 3 times, that video. Mostly because I had to revise what I was actually like talking about. Like I realized I wanted to give more actual reference to the techniques that increase speed, but can still give good results. I shot the video on contrast over the last couple days. That's the last part of I realized I never finished my color theory series for YouTube. So the last one is contrast. And I use all sorts of models that we've painted on this stream as my examples. So you guys will see some familiar minis when you see that on the YouTubes. I have to put it on the Patreon first. I'll be doing that hopefully today. Bye, Crowley. Sorry you can't stay very long. Yeah, I redid it a couple times. And I hate redoing stuff. It's very frustrating to my brain. And I'm going to have to take that up more. But yeah, so I put out extra videos this month. You're going to get another one. Again, I'm trying to put more effort into my YouTube for a few months to see if there's any uptick, if I actually should bother trying to go for partner or not. So far nothing, but you know, takes a while for algorithms to figure things out. Just blending this in a little bit. I needed it to look a little nicer. Oh, good, sea trial. Yay! Yeah, I'm about to put together a color theory playlist as well. And I want to put together a concepts, probably an NMM playlist and an OSL playlist, or maybe just a concepts playlist. I want there to be a lot of playlists for people to be able to find what they need. So I have to work on that. It's just one of those things that doesn't directly pertain to actually making content. So I get to it when I get to it. Content is kind of the purpose right now on the platform. Gotta have content to grow, so. Any topics you guys think I should do for? Actually, I'll ask you, C-Trial, since you're new. Oh, you also watched color theory ones? Oh, yeah. Yeah, the contrast one kind of ties a lot of that together, too. Is there any topic that you would like to see me do for the YouTubes? This applies to all of you, if any of you have, suggestions. Given that I've done, the fundamental stuff, and I did, a fair amount in color theory. And now we'll finish that out. We did OSL, we did NMM. Oh, yeah, that is not me, but you should look up on Reaper's YouTube, House of Vex. VEX. It's a Reaper series. It's a short Reaper series, starring Aaron Lovejoy, who is an airbrush, expert. And although he is talking particularly about the Reaper Vex, which is the kind of collab airbrush that Ed created with Badger, a lot of the information that he gives you is generalistic airbrush information. And I think Aaron teaches this really well, and he's very good at it. So, yeah, that's often... Yeah, honestly, the very messy with it is often just practice. And Aaron will have exercises I've seen him using coaching where he'll take a piece of paper that's divided into grid, and you just take your airbrush and you practice putting little dots at each of the points where the grid intersects. And little exercises like that can hugely improve your control in a very short amount of time. It might be boring while you're doing it. It's kind of like I recommend doing lining for brush control. Yeah, it's boring, but it also trains your hands and your eyes to do the fine work, the precise work, in as short a time as anything will. So the whole point here is to get you to a next level of mastery in the shortest possible time, even if it's a little boring to do the exercise. So yeah, definitely look up Aaron's stuff. Think about doing that exercise. Make yourself just take a piece of cardstock or thick paper or cardboard or whatever, and just put down primer, draw a grid with pencil or whatever, and just practice putting the little dots and seeing how big or little, try to make them a certain size, try to make them, uniform. It'll help your control so much. I am not an airbrush expert. I actually love brushwork so much that although I've used an airbrush and all, it's fun, I find that for me it causes a little bit of disconnect with the figure, because for me when I'm doing the base coat is when I'm kind of identifying with the figure, when I'm kind of like figuring out how do I want to paint this, how do I want to tackle this. Like I do a lot of kind of like on the spot decision making with figures. And if I do airbrush, I find that I miss that. Like I don't have that connection. I don't know, I've put a bunch of colors down now here, or I've done these wings, but now what do I do, right? So yeah, warm-ups also help. Yep, for sure. Yeah, that's a good one, Hyper. I could do that. Different skin tones. Especially since you guys know I just, did a Latinx slash, Hispanic mid-dark. This is a hard one to pull off. But we could totally do a video on it. Alrighty. And it's not that hard once you know what colors to use. Yeah, setting aside time to do intentional practice is always something we as humans resist, because we'd really just like to jump in and do it and think we can learn just as well by actually accomplishing something. When in reality, that is often not the case. I mean, sure you can do it that way, but it's going to take you longer to learn if you do it that way. Often, anyway. It depends. Some people learn very well by just like jumping in. So it's very much an individual thing. But if you notice that you're getting diminishing returns through doing that way, then yeah. So I'm doing wet blending with really wet paint here and no undercoat, but I know I'm going to have to adjust it. Can't paint, need healing. I'm sorry. Yeah, you damaged yourself at your triathlon, Aerowiz? Oh, yikes. Not good. I'm sorry. I don't trust bikes. I'm very leery of bicycles. Plus, they're just fiendishly uncomfortable to sit on. I don't know how anybody does that for hours. Yeah, I hope you recover as quickly as you can, then. I wish you good healing. Swift healing. So, since this is still wet, I can do a little bit of a wet blend up here. And when I'm doing a wet blend on a long surface like this, I will often go in the direction of the surface. Even though that's a no-no with layering, it can get you, if you're going for a gradient like this, it can actually get you good results doing this. I mean, but the thing to remember though, Hyper, is that, jumping in can always mean jumping into practice. Like, you don't always have to jump in on the model. You could jump into doing a bunch of, grid squares with your airbrush. Like, it just means you don't think a lot before you do it. You don't plan it. You're just like, okay, I'm just going to try to do this. Maybe you just grab a random piece of cardboard and try it. It doesn't mean that you don't benefit from practice. It just means that, you're a little bit more able to be adaptable, and maybe you learn a little faster when you get into trouble, right? Whereas some people hate getting into trouble, hate doing things by mistake. It kills their urge to paint or to continue on the model if they do. So they have to watch that a lot more. It's different personality types, different strengths, different stuff. Yeah, gravel is treacherous on bikes. I learned that as a kid. David's folks are really into biking. I'm just not a... I've realized I'm just not a biker. I liked riding my bike as a kid. But somehow, as time went on, I just wasn't as into it. And when I look at it now, I'm just like, I'd rather run it or walk it. I gotta blend this in now. Remember, we don't want to leave that edge to dry. So we can blob those paints down and then do the blend. I've also got my little personal fan on, which is totally sabotaging me because the airflow is making things dry faster. I want this blue to be actually a little more narrow, so I'm okay fuzzing a lot of it out. So what I want here is, depending on the angle of the wing panel, like this one is definitely facing up, so it gets all blue. But this one kind of has an indentation. It's blue here, and then it's going to be meat rocks colored up on the top. So I kind of have to look at, my angles here. And this one up at the top is going to be almost all meat colored. I'm just going to use the meat rocks. You guys all know what I mean. The meat rocks. Meat rocks. Oh yeah, yeah. There you can do well. The key to making true metallics look really good is to use NMM techniques with it. Sutral. That might seem kind of obvious, but because the NMM is just trying to to simulate what happens naturally, right? But in a lot of ways, because of scale, it does it a little more effectively than metallic flake does. So. There we go. Then we got more meat rocks up there. So I'm kind of just I'm trying to figure out where my sky is. This one is all pointed down. So this is totally going to be all meat rocks except the edge. But yeah, you're right. I haven't really covered true metallics. My problem with true metallics is that I tend to use it. I don't use it very much on 28. So maybe I should just do a video on that and why I don't, and then show examples if I have some examples of when I did use it, or I'll paint something to illustrate. Or maybe I should just start out by doing a video why NMM instead of true metallics, or NMM versus metallics. Just so people understand, kind of the criteria I'm using when I decide what to use for what. That's probably a good idea. Yeah, we can start there, and then I can go into the true metallics more, because I already have the NMM content. Yeah, thanks for the ideas, guys. I really appreciate it. Often, I'm the biggest challenge of being a creator is figuring out, what your audience really wants to see from you. What's the best thing you can give them now at this point, right? So I really appreciate the help you guys give. One shade of silver. That's actually fine, as long as those, what you want, actually. Because I find using, different shades of metallics to not be the way, with one exception. So all you need, sea trial, is a bright gold and a bright silver. You don't want a dark silver, you don't want a dark gold, you want as true punchy gold silver as you can get. And after that, the only metallic you might want to pick up is pearl white or another white metallic. So MSP, it's pearl white, 9100. And that is a white metallic. And the reason you would get that is to mix highlights for your gold and silver. Or to apply highlights. Which is sometimes useful. If you want to punch it up just that little extra bit, white metallic, just like white paint, is super useful. So, but otherwise you don't need all those different color metallics. You can mix them yourself. You can just add paint to your metallics. Like, honestly, these days I don't even necessarily do that. I just like put washes and glazes over the top of my metallics to create shadows. Yeah. Look for pearl white or find a print. I don't know how many other people do a metallic white or whether they're any good, but yeah, so a white metallic, it's not, you don't have to start with that. You can just start with your gold and your silver. But yeah, obviously I need to do a metallics thing. I will work on that. Actually, let me make a list. These are great, and I'll probably get done super fast since I've been trying to do like one a week or one every other week. So far it's been one a week, but I know that my family reunion is probably going to disrupt me and keep me from being totally on schedule for the end of the month. So I want different skin tones. NMM versus metallics, Y. Y one over the other. And then shaded metallics, or TMM, true metallic metals. How-tos. I probably would do a how-to shading, how-to highlighting kind of thing. How-to viz. I might do really short ones on this and just do like 3: base coat, shading, and highlighting. I'd have to find a good model for it, but I'm sure I've got one somewhere. All right, thanks. Any other suggestions, guys? Oh yeah. No, GW no longer prefers TMM. They have moved past that. I mean, if you do it well, you can really, get some points from the old school people with like that way, but these days the majority of winners, I think I counted out of all the Golden Demon winners at this past year's Golden Demon, 12 or 13 were metallics and all the rest were NMM. And that's like, what, 12 categories with 3 places in each, so 36. So about a third. A quarter to a third, I would say, of entries. Probably a third. So 2/3 are NMM. Highlighting colors with not obvious highlighting. Oh, yeah. Okay, so highlight colors. A kind of a survey on different colors for highlighting. I can do that. I can do white, yellow, and blue. Off white, yellow, and blue, I mean. Plus yellow. Okay. Yeah, I can do that. That's a good one. That's a really good one. I love those more general ones because they help more people just off the top of my head. Okay, cool. Excellent. Thanks, everybody. Super thanks. The advantage of you like responding to me when I ask this is so one of the actually I should show you guys this. Hold on. So one of the ways, if you're wondering like how you're facing, like how your little like areas are facing, let's get us in the focus up closest. Focus up closest. So if you're wondering like where your panels are facing, the thing you can do is to tilt the model so that the light is coming down as you imagine it, and that's going to give you shadows where it's definitely turned away. You got to watch the drop shadow. It's more than that. So like the wing bar here, this really dark shadow, ignore that. But I'm more looking at like the soft shadows. and like the brighter highlights. So I'm kind of like maybe even, I can also do the underneath thing, which I've done before. 1 second. So find your brightest sticky note, pink, orange, blue, whatever. Orient your model, and then put this underneath and kind of look at, I'm looking at all the places here where the light reflects. Then there's some areas that aren't touched at all. So anywhere I'm seeing blue actually gets to be meat rocks. So almost all of this, except for like this little edge. And actually this one, I need to make that more white over here. Like the blending. Yeah, I did do a video on wet blending. So it would be like more like what specifically are you challenged by with that short rest? First of all, have you watched the fundamentals video on wet blending? And what's missing? I'm gonna block out this. So I just have the blue more toward the edge on this one, because this one is more pointed out, less pointed up. But the outer edge here tilts. So. Okay, KK. Yeah, I don't know his name because I only got sent him without a card, Twisted Oma. Okay. So what are you missing? What do you feel you're missing about wet blending after watching other people's videos? Just going to block over this a little bit. Like what key, what trouble, what specific pain point are you having? Talk to me. So I put it on my video list, but I also might just be able to answer it right here. Okay, I'm just going to block that out. I mean, I'm doing a lot of wet blending in here, though. I mean, I'm doing some layering, too. This one got too dark, I think. So I'm refining, figuring out my wing bits. Because a lot of what I'm doing here, there's a fair amount of wet blending in what I'm doing here, like there. Then I'm just using a damp brush to come back and blend that into the dry areas. So it's a combo. It's still interesting, but that's more like making a glaze out of a wet blend, which is so specialist. Smaller, yes. Okay, so short rest. It is hard to spot wet blend. It is something that you've got to work at. It's something that I've slowly worked at over time. And what it is usually is you've got to learn to really control the amount of paint you're putting down. And to get comfortable like blending with just the tip of the brush. So if I put down too much paint, I'm not going to be able to wet blend a tiny surface here. So let's see. So I need this corner to be blended. So I'm going to put down, let's say I just put down some white, maybe some blue white. So I'm going to just put down a really, really thin, like not very much paint at all. And I'm going to start working into that. Maybe I've got to be quick and kind of get some paint off my brush and kind of dab and dab. You got to work fast because small areas are going to dry much faster, right? So you've got to work it fast. So it's a combo of getting comfortable with the speed and with the fact that you're actually going to put down very, very little actual paint. Like most people, I think they flood the surface because they think that doing that will keep the paint wet longer, and it's true, but it also means that you've lost all control over wet blending in that tiny area. So I put down a thin layer of white first, and then sometimes it's just a matter of you have to kind of go back and forth a little bit. So wet blending a tiny little bit. Also remember that wet blending itself is never going to give you a punchy result. So often you can get the blend, but then in order to really pop it, I need to go and take the blue color, right? And I need to layer that on at that point. I need to like really put that on in a small area. Because when you're wet blending, you're never going to get pure white and you're never going to get your darkest blue. You're always going to get a mix. So even in the areas where I'm using pure white to blend in, there's still a tiny bit of blue seeping into that. And in the areas where I'm trying to use a dark blue, there's, the white is seeping into that. So you're never getting either, with wet blends, you're never getting either of your opposing colors. You're never getting this pure and you're never getting that pure. You're always getting transitions in between. So when you're trying to do a very small area, we're depending on contrast then in order to carry that effect. So remember that, like, to hit the contrast you might need for that area to really look cool, it's actually going to mean maybe you do an initial wet blend, but you're going to have to come back with layering. So like for here, if I want this blue to really pop, boom, I had to come back with layering to do it. If I want white to pop up here, I need to come back with layering to do that. So part of it is choosing the right tool for the job. On small areas, layering is honestly just as fast as trying to F around with a wet blend for forever. And I used to know a painter who, like, he wet blended everything. He actually didn't layer. It just wasn't his groove. Like, he loved wet blending. I think he had an oil painting background. But it took him forever to do one model because all the small areas would give him conniptions. Yeah, so the answer here is that you probably want to work in a room that has a higher humidity if you can. You might even want to get a humidifier. Because if you're going to be trying to do wet blending on small areas, usually you want the paint to stay wetter, but you're not going to be able to put a lot of paint on there. So I might actually, one of the tricks you can do is to first put down a base coat. So if I wanted to do a little tiny piece of this blue, I'm going to actually put down a light blue base coat first, right? So get that base coat down. What that lets you do is then you can thin your paint to the point that I am, where they're very, very thin. You can see how much they're falling off the side of the palette here. This is extremely thin paint, but I'm wet blending with it. If I don't have to worry about my base coat, putting all this water into these colors is what's going to keep it wetter for enough time for me to wet blend it, right? So if you're doing tiny areas, put a base coat down first, probably your midtone. And then thin your paint a lot so you have enough water so that it's going to stay wet as you're working on those little areas. And use very little paint on your brush. Oh, textures. I mean, that's all textures and it's all the same technique for whenever you're doing like different materials, you're talking usually textures or the height of the highlights, like contrast, textures and contrast. That's a really complex topic. Techniques for different materials. I can write it down, but it's going to be like it's not a simple thing. Contrast and textures. Most people don't realize that a lot of it is like light dark contrast and highlights and shadows that allow you to establish some of that stuff. Textures is much more. Oh, okay. Bye, C-Trial. Sure, thank you for all the ideas. I don't really have a highlighting topic, though, Laura. I pretty much, the way I approach anything is very much from a fundamentals perspective, a technical perspective, which is why the fundamentals series is what it is, where it doesn't talk about highlighting. It talks about wet blending, layering, glazing. You can create highlights with glazing, you can create them with layering, and you can create them with wet blending. but I don't cover highlights. I cover the techniques that lead you there. Same thing with shadows, right? You can do a shadows with a wash, you can do it with glazing, you can do it with layering, you can do it with wet blending. All those things you can do. So I don't have just a video for how to paint shadows. Now I do want to kind of like do some light theory stuff when I've mastered it sufficiently, mastered the topic sufficiently to teach it, but I'm not there yet. And that might be more what you might think about is how does light actually act, and how do we do that on a miniature, right? These are all curving downward. This one just has that little edge. This one is up. I think, yeah, this one is totally up. So to demo, I'm just going to block this in light blue first. Oh, was there a highlighting topic? I missed it. Yeah, freehand tips and tricks. Yep. Yeah, that's another. I feel like, though, the thing about freehand tips and tricks is that it's got a very small audience. Like, I've already noticed on my dashboard that there's a lot less interest in the NMM or OSL videos. And you would think not, right? Because in our community at ReaperCon, there's a huge amount of interest in those things. But that's not why people are coming to my channel. So I have to think about that, right? I don't want to, and freehand is like the tippy top of that. Freehand is the thing that anybody coming into miniature painting who is not already an artist thinks they can't do. It's like the pinnacle. Ah, there it is, right? So it's definitely not a highest priority. I didn't see the highlighting topic. Oh yeah, different colors for highlighting. That's the one. Okay, yeah. Okay, so kind of put that onto that. Yeah, I don't think I would want to mix that into that, though. Like, it would definitely be a different video. Like, and again, highlighting different materials, I think the way to do that is to definitely do a video on painting leather, right? Or painting rough cloth, or painting, that's going to be more under textures. And that textures topic is going to also cover, like, how strongly you highlight for different ones, right? Yeah, freehanding is a lot simpler than most people think. Like, you can keep it very simple. It's not like you're trying to do a huge painting on the side of something. Although those of us who can do freehand, we have done that. But for a lot of freehand, it's simple design and repeated patterns, and you don't have to be perfect with it because, if it's elaborate, the eye is just going to get impacted by the elaborateness of it, and people are usually not going to pick it apart. There we go. Kind of getting that. Yeah, and a lot of people are intimidated, right? That topic. Just bring in a little bit. Haven't used my darkest blue a lot here. And this idea might not pan out, on the wings here, in which case I'll have to pivot. But we'll try. All right. I think a lot of this wing is actually not facing up. Gotta kind of look. Again, there's a little bit of it. I feel like this one is going to be mostly white and not blue at all until it gets to the lower part. too much blue in there. That's why I was talking about wet blending. It always goes weird. Right, yeah. Yeah, it's a topic. I've totally done stuff for the Patreon on simple freehand, because you start with simple designs. Hold on, I gotta get this blended. There's a little tiny bit of blue. But yeah, no, this is great. You guys have given me like a lot of ideas. That's fantastic. Thank you. Fantastic. Good stuff. Though I should probably do the skin tones thing in a PDF for the Patreon. The different skin tones, like that totally needs to be a Patreon first, because I can go much more into depth with the Patreon, which is why I like it. So some of this stuff I'll purpose for the Patreon, and then it might get a short video for the tube. And then on the tube, I can tell people, if you want a deep dive on this, go to the Patreon. David considers himself crappy at freehand, Twistedoma. Actually, when it gets down to here, there's no, that's going to be less and less sky reflection as we get down here. So I want to block that in white, actually. David has gotten a lot better at freehand since he forced himself to do it. He used to just hate it. He hated it when he was working on Techlist, but now he's come to terms with it. He's come to peace with it, I guess. He still doesn't like it the way I like it, but I was a 2D artist before I was a miniature painter, so it's not surprising that I like freehand. But part of David's thing with freehand is he keeps it as simple as possible. Like his Swifty even, that's a pretty simple freehand pattern. Like you just have to grid it out. That is correct, Carrie. But you know what? Any one of you could paint that t-shirt pattern from Swifty, as long as you can paint small enough. Like the challenge in the Swifty t-shirt is not the pattern. It's being able to paint small enough shapes. So having the fine motor is actually worth more than having the freehand ability. Yeah, I mean, people who come from an art background understand using a grid. And people think you can't do that on miniatures, and that's absolutely false. That's what he did. He gridded it. He divided he looked at every individual panel, he divided it into the simple shapes and where they were located, and he just did each individual thing. Well, the buttons are pretty easy. I mean, it's not as you can't get super tiny on that. I'm not saying that my husband is not great at freehand. He is. But I'm also saying that you guys understand that freehand is one of those things, and some people do understand this. Freehand is one of those things that you're convinced is really hard, when actually there are tricks that make it quite simple. And then the challenge is in translating those tricks, because those tricks come in general from 2D art. But the challenge is in translating those tricks to being tiny. And so then it's not actually artistic skill. It's brush control. It's, can you paint the eyeballs, right? If you can paint eyeballs reliably. Yeah, so you have to essentially shrink that down to teensy. But that's where it comes down, like I said, it comes down more to brush control than artistic ability. And this one's going to be all blue because it's definitely pointing up. Boop, boop, doop, doop, boop, doop, doop. There. But yeah, there won't be a lot on this wing. There's going to be a lot of Steak Rocks color because it's mostly, everything is curving down, and mostly, I think everything here, this panel's down. There might be a little teensy bit of blue on a couple of these, but teensy bits. Yeah, grid work, yeah. Yeah, very similar, uh-huh. Yep. Yep. Yeah, and then all you need the brush control to be able to do your grid on your, you know, the bust that he had, you know what, it's like about, the t-shirt's about 1 inch by 1 inch, so you need to be able to take that to like 1/4 inches or 1/8 of an inch grid and kind of like break down your art reference. And probably where you get into the more artistic side of it is just that you need the brain, and this isn't even artistic so much as analytical, but you need the brain to like identify the main shapes. So once you've got your tiny grid and you're looking at your t-shirt, your Eris t-shirt, for example, and in this case, there are also tricks. You can take a picture of the t-shirt you're trying to duplicate, put it into a Photoshop program, and just shrink it. Shrink it to the point that you're going to put it on the t-shirt, and that's going to simplify all of your shapes. Right away, you won't be able to see the fine detail before. You're only going to be able to see the dark, the light, the different color, the blobs, right? And you paint those blobs. And then maybe you really look and you see, well, if I can see a hint of this, then you can add a little bit of extra detail. Yeah, grid work is essentially when you take a piece of something, art or something. Let's say I was doing the kitty cat, this little mouse here, little mouse face. If I were to draw a grid across it and draw a grid across it, so maybe 4x4, then I can look at, you know, and then go over to my say I want to do the mouse face on a t-shirt, on a Swiftie, on that model. Then I go over to my t-shirt and I do the same grid in exactly the space I want the mouse face to fit. Then I just look and I'm saying, okay, in my upper piece here, there's just this branch and this part of the ear. And, you know, if I shrink this a little, I'm probably not going to see all of these little details. I'm just going to see the pink and the yellow and maybe a couple of these lines. So that's what I paint into that part of the grid. And you just keep going. Yes. But this kind of work can be very mechanical. And it's just like, you know, and it's just like where you are in your space, you know, like who you are is going to determine like whether you approach it in a more mechanical or more artistic way, you know, where you're comfortable. And that's just going to be you. You know, I'm more comfortable with, I still use dots though. Like that, I would talk, when we've done freehand on this stream, I've done a lot of dots, right? I do a connect the dots freehand. I don't do a grid. But I can use it that way. I can do dots in a grid and utilize the same idea. It's just that I usually only need to be able to figure out where, like, roughly things are. I kind of need a landmark as far as where certain components are, and then I'm able to just run with it. Yes, a grid, yeah. Especially with drawing animals, because eye placement can be so key. My mom is struggling with that right now. She loves birds and she tries to paint them. But getting the eye placement correct on a bird's head is actually really difficult. And can be the same with dogs, cats. With cats, it's always the muzzle that throws me off. Like how short it is and how to paint it, how to draw it. But yeah, so grids can be really, really useful for that. And once you do enough of it, like if you're painting a lot of birds, you eventually just get a gut instinct for where that eye needs to go. But until you get there, the grid helps. Yeah, yep, I use dots all the time. Especially for a complex work. Just to look at proportions often. Like when we did the tree, I don't have the tree one anymore, but we did the tree of life kind of picture on that one. Right. Yes, exactly. If you draw something enough, you have no problem placing the eye. I have no problem in placing the eye correctly on a dog because I've drawn dogs for decades. But on some breeds I might, right? If I was trying to draw a Frenchie, I would have problems because I grew up drawing collies and shepherds and that kind of head, right? So yeah, it's just a learning curve. And a lot of it is about proportion. So yeah, freehand is just, it's easier than you think. But what's more important before you try freehand is making sure you have the fine motor. And that's a built skill, right? Since we're doing miniatures, everything we do is smaller. And that's where the difficulty can really set in with freehand. Alrighty, and then maybe a tiny bit on just like this one and this one, I think, the edges here. Most of this, well, that's actually facing up. Yeah, I guess a lot of this lower part can be blue. And I may, as I'm trying to figure this out, there are many points where I could just stop and say, okay, I need to adjust this. Like once I've got all this together and I start putting in the stake rocks color, I'm going to probably need to adjust what I've done here. Almost certainly. So you need to stay open to the fact that blocking in is just blocking in, and you're going to probably have to adjust it. Yeah, a lot of people do that. Actually, that's a classical artist tool, and what James Gurney talks about, guys, is using the ferrule of your paintbrush. So when he's, a lot of artists will do this, they'll use various parts of their brushes. So when they're sketching something on location, they'll hold up their brush, just like this. You see this all the time, the artist looking at the brush. What they're doing there is they're saying, okay, so the doorway on this house is exactly the height, or 2/3 the height of my brush ferrule. And then they'll use that as a proportional tool to construct everything. Right? Okay, so the distance on either side of the door is a full brush ferrule, or maybe it's just the width of the brush ferrule, right? So once you have one thing that you're using to establish scale, like the ferrule of your brush, you can utilize that to do that, the X versus Y, as you say, the proportional judgments. On a miniature, not so usable, right? At that point, you have to more. For me, sometimes if I'm doing dots, I will actually use like a particular part of the bristle. Like I'll be like, okay, so if that dot is here, half of a bristle is, the rest of the way up the trunk of the tree I'm trying to draw, or something like that, right? Yeah, per brush here. Sometimes it feels like that, Michael. But you know what? If you're going to that level, you've gone too far, because miniatures, because of the scale, you're getting too detailed. It is absolutely possible to get too detailed for scale when you're painting minis, when you're trying to do this stuff. But yeah, so there's various tricks. I guess the point is there are various tricks you can use to do freehand to make it easier. And the real challenge is being able to execute in such a small area, which comes down to brush control and fine motor. So it's a double. What that means is it takes more than one skill to be good at it, right? It's a double whammy. But it's not as much like, if you're afraid that you can't do freehand because you're not artistic, quote unquote, even though I believe everybody is a little bit creative somewhere, chances are you actually be better at it than you think, because it's not just that. I need to blend that in a lot right there, but I don't have my brown liner out and I don't want to grab it. There's a lot of blending I'm going to need to do with shadows. And a lot of glazing, probably. Probably that would actually help. Yep, yeah, a lot of people do their like banners for Games Workshop. A lot of people will actually print out the banner in a tiny format, and then they'll just paint that over that. And actually, that's great brush control practice. That's super, super good brush control practice. I'm actually going to just glaze white over this. And I'm actually going to glaze white over this, too. Glazing white is always fraught. Slurping off excess. Yeah, I wanted that more. That makes it easier to blend. What's up there, Kiki? What you doing? She's too quiet. All right, so what we got right now? Oh, I got one more panel over here. Ooh, a coloring book. There you go. Bonus. Just putting a little bit of my Sea Dragon down here just for funsies. See if it'll work. Yep, exactly. Twistedoma, exactly. I have to call pest control today. We have an ant invasion in our bathroom. They really invaded in force last night. I spent a lot of time squashing ants last night. David happily, reminded me that that on the planet Earth, ants have more biomass than we do, than humans do. Which is just a frightening amount of ant. Let me get a little bit bluer here. There. All right. So let's look at, I want a little bit more of this deeper blue up here too. Pop it in. Yeah, I mean, if you're injured, you're injured, Airways. That's just the way it goes. Life is life. Hey, if you don't enter, then you'll have more entries done for the next year, right? All right, getting just a little bit of that deeper blue in there. I'm just getting some darker stuff. All right, let's look. All right, so I'm kind of looking at, okay, that's about right, I think. Like, looking at this, I feel like there's going to be definitely some white. There might be a tiny bit of blue at, like, the very bottom of this, but a tiny, tiny bit of blue maybe. We're just pretty much trying to figure out where I'm going to be reflecting sky versus, you know, sky or horizon line versus versus sand. Cool. Hey, Dogfather. That's cool, Dogfather. Doesn't matter. I mean, you can paint or not paint. You can hang out with us anyway. We don't care. We're all good. All right, so... Alrighty. Now the question is, do I want to line in here? And when I do line, it's lining in this case on these wings would be kind of a reflection of horizon line and reflected light. So I have to think about that a lot. Because some of this, like, probably I would see a tiny bit of, like, the red-orange on some of the undersides of these. So... yeah, so just trying to figure out, like, where the sky is really going to show here. Need to grab a little bit of white and put it in there. It's a titchy thing, and like I said, you come back and you readjust these things a lot. So what I've got right now, I might still vary and change. But yeah, it's looking pretty cool. Oh, nothing, Kara, nothing. You didn't miss anything. You missed people being very generous with ideas about what I could do next on YouTube. We talked a lot about a lot of stuff. We talked about, metallics and NMM, and we talked about talked a lot about wet blending. Talked a little bit about airbrushing and why everybody should watch Aaron Lovejoy's videos for Reaper. Freehand techniques, the grid. Yeah, using gridding to do freehand. Stuff like that. Why freehand isn't as like artist intense as you think it is. Like, it's more on miniatures, it's a lot more about brush control and fine motor than it is about, you know, being an artist. It can be much simpler to do freehand than people think. All right, I think that's about where I want to be. Oh, yeah, airbrushes are the devil. I agree. One of your class books coming tomorrow. That's very exciting. Yeah, I encouraged Hyper to teach that class because I think it will be super useful. Carrie. So hopefully it goes well. Good luck, Hyper. I think if I were you, I'd focus less on judging criteria and more on what you can do to get better, but that's just, you know, that's up to you and how you want to teach it. You're the instructor. Alrighty. Yeah, you guys are crazy with your resources. Man, I just show up and teach. Like, I just don't have the time or the bandwidth to, like, do all this stuff. Like, I'm always prioritizing other things. I just want to do the stuff. I just want to do the thing. I don't want to do other things. Yeah, I think we're okay. We'll alter this a lot as we continue with it, I think. But it's okay-ish. It's okay-ish. Oh, right. Phoenix Flame and Cobalt Scale for Stake Rocks. I might take the Stake Rocks a little bit more golden. We'll see. I'm heading that way with them as far as their highlights go. I don't really want to put stake rock color up here yet because I'm not sure. Your books are compensating. Yeah. I don't know if I have a hangout session. My hangout session is whenever I'm at my table, which is most of the time. Otherwise, I'm doing things and don't hang out. If I disappear from my place, I'm either doing another thing or I've retreated to my room to unhang out. But yeah, pretty much if I'm at my space and I'm not directly answering a question, like, I tend to be very, like, I'm going to be busy pretty much all evenings because, like, the one evening, Thursday evening, David and I are totally going to go out to our date dinner, which will probably be at Hannah's. And then when we come back, we're probably just going to, like, I don't know, he'll probably roam around and talk to people. I may just crash because I know what I'm in for on Friday, Saturday. And I've gotten used to, like, trying to save my energy. That's true. That's true. Ugh. I don't know. Hangout space. Man, that's a hard call. Yeah, because I just get so busy. Right? Heavy breathing and staring. When you're not, it's Rhonda or me, huh? Yeah, bring comfy shoes for sure. Yes, I ask a lot of does that make sense? Yep, me too. If I have to, like, start making an Anne hangout time, I guess that's something I have to think about. Oh, sorry. Yawns. Yeah, because, I mean, probably the best time would be, like, Thursday evening after David and I go to dinner and come back completely food comaed. It's the only open space, like, because if you look at it on Friday, you know, I'm talking to people all day and answering questions and painting or whatever, and then we do judging, right? So, like, right after supper is judging, and then after judging goes till dark 30 and I fall into bed and die. And then Saturday is award ceremony, right? So, and I really believe in being at my artist place as much as I possibly can, because a lot of people are, like, teaching a lot, and so they're not at their artist space. And I feel like anytime somebody walks through the artist tables, because I have the luxury of not teaching, like, I can be there to answer questions, to talk to them about stuff. You know, I can be that person. So, and that's important to me. That's important to me to be, to be somebody who's there, you know, to touch base with. I mean, usually noon is the cutoff. But I don't know, it's moved. So sometimes, is it really 5? Holy crap. That's so late. Oh, right. Friday, not Saturday. You're right. Thanks. No, you're right. It's probably around 5. You're right. Now that I stop and think about days. Thinking about days is hard. Let's go shopping. Oof. Yeah. And then I need to question whether I'm going to make... I think I'm going to make the struts a different color. I think they're actually going to be, like, more like a dark metallic or something like that. Like a dark steel metallic. Like the black. That's what I'm kind of feeling. Because I don't want to do Skyrith on all these freaking things. Like, I would die. Yes, the judges have to be the first to see. Uh-huh. Yes. Val, that's good. Yeah, come up anytime for that, as long as I'm not, like, obviously if I'm about to run to grab a drink or something, like, but I'll just hang out, like, come up, say, hi, I'm Val Thorne, help me, here is my paint. And I can run it through my ringer and see what's up. She can totally hide it in line. She can just keep it in a box and only take it out when it's time to actually enter it. Oh yeah, I am not entering any competitions this year. I've decided. Like, because last year I finished 3 models in like a day and a half to finish up my entries, and I don't want to do that again. I want to be more present this year. So I want to be more present, more engaged. That's what I'm going to do this year. Yes, it's going to be pretty impressive, Kara. Well, she can always get a handy little, like, dust cover, like a very stylish, cloth cover for her acrylic case, and then she can whip it off a la tablecloth at the restaurant. Voila! Steal a napkin from the restaurant. Yeah, I got to work on my book. Like, getting 3 favors done has slid into the top priority position. So, yeah, it's something she doesn't want any news of it to get out until it's properly entered and essentially been judged, Laura. So, yes. Oh, a velvet cover, yeah. Staring very intently at the model and then putting it away again. It's valid, Quindy. It's valid. You can't touch velvet? Alright. Then just use it. Get a nice linen tablecloth or not tablecloth, but napkin. One of those giant napkins from fancy restaurants. Put a napkin. Or satin. No, satin's too stiff. Use silk. Silk is see-through. We can't do that. Nope. I'm back to napkin. Fancy linen cloth. Embroider something. I don't know. Huh. You don't need something terribly large. I think a big napkin actually would work. A pillowcase would work too. Pillowcase is actually a good idea. Although it's a little bit overkill, but yeah, if you're draping it. You'd have to, like, fasten it with clips or something so it wouldn't move. The embroidery. I'm happy to have given you that. Finally, I've pushed to a point where Kara's like, nope. And that will help, Quindy. Good deal. Little tiny steps, Quindy. Tiny steps. I just stopped painting because I was like, I don't want to do steak rocks, and I'm out of oomph on doing this. This is doing this sort of thing where you're intentionally thinking while you're doing it. It's it's draining. Like, sometimes you get a certain extent and then you're just like, okay, I'm done. Gold metallic pillowcase. I'm sure you can. Certain you can. Yes, you do. Yeah, you need that. Yep. I like the idea of doing like little like bedazzled gemstones on it. Gold metallic pillowcase with little gemstones. Perfect. Sequins always look so weird though. If you get the stick-on little artificial gemstones, you can like Do a pattern. We are not helping Kara. We are only giving her more things for her brain to like run rampant on. We are the anti-focus. Chat is the anti-focus. Sequins always look weird to me. I like beading, but I don't like sequining. As far as, you know, I've worn both, but... But yeah. Cool, everybody. I'm glad that we have all contributed to totally distracting Kara with more ideas. Fish scales, yep. Yeah. Most sparkles. Do you have glittery eyeshadow yet? You probably like absolutely do. But I don't remember you as being a big makeup person, so I'm not at all. Mostly because my eyes are so sensitive, they just get irritated. It depends on how sparkly you want to be. Yeah, that's me too. When I do makeup, it's really subtle. But I don't even like doing it anymore because, like, mascara it makes my eyes itch, and then I rub my eyes, and then things just get worse, so. Yes, ironically. It's the one subtlety of Kara. Yes, if Kara was here, she would jump in with both feet, yes. Yeah, I never do base. Not ever. I have good skin, and I'm just going to run with that. Alrighty, guys. I feel like we had a decent sit and chat moment here at the end of the stream for Friday. It makes it feel more like a Friday. Maybe I should do this regularly on Friday, where I'm just like, let's just sit and chat for a bit. Especially leading up to ReaperCon. Just feels good. So I hope that you all are planning to have a great weekend. I will be streaming tomorrow. Not sure what I'll be painting. Maybe we'll do Morgana again, because I really like Morgana. I really like working on her. And since I repainted the staff, I feel like I'm better. Yes, so I will see you all. Some of you will be at Paint Club, but I'll see some of you tomorrow. No, not tomorrow? Okay, you'll be helping your parents. That makes sense. I can't have a Quindy all the time. Oh, noes. Sadness. Sadness for not having a Quindy all the time. First world problems. I love you too, Kara. Yes, indeedy. Happy weekend, everybody. Let's all just chill. Yeah, sad for no Quindy for sure. But that's all right. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And on Monday, it looks like we'll be hitting... we'll be hitting Death Knight Mouseling again. Yeah, it's Death Knight Mouseling time. It's Death Knight Mouseling time. It's Death Knight Mouseling time. Yeah. We'll be doing that. Which makes me happy. So yeah, I'll miss you too, Quindy. I always miss you when you're not there. All right, folks. Have a great one, and I will talk to you later. If nothing else, I'll see you Monday. All right? Bye-bye.